All right, I think we have a quorum here of a room, and we're probably more people are going to join. So let's start with this question. And I find this question, several people have been asked this question, and I found it really interesting. And it's sort of like a strategy execution type of question. So what I would like to do, and the way we do this is first I propose some kind of framework to do this, and then I like somebody or that wants to actually solve this. Start with it, and then all of us can jump in and maybe help answer this question together, and or provide feedback also to that person, whatever works best. So let me start with one framework that I was thinking about, and if you guys want to shout out yours, want to tell us about your own framework, that would be also great, and we can discuss it. So I was thinking, the question is, let me put it this here. So the question is, and I'm going to start recording now. So for those of you that want to put your photo or something, question: should Uber Eats be a different app from Uber Rides? Okay. Be a different app than Uber Rides. Okay. All right. So starting with that, then so if I were asked this question, what would I do? Well, I think that the first thing I would ask is, and by the way, I know that Uber is already merging them, right? So they probably decided that that's a great idea. Okay, so it's an interesting question about why is it? So the first thing is, all right, I would talk about, first of all, the products, and what is the state of the products, both products. Where are they right now, right? Are they, growing, is still a growing stage, or are they already, a product that is mature, and so on? And that, that gives an idea of perhaps where the focus should be of each of these products. And then after talking about that, then I would say, okay, so let's, what should be the goal, right? I would like to talk about what would be the goal of the product. But before I do that, I would talk about, these 5 different things. And I'm throwing here the 5 C's because it allows me to think comprehensively about the product. And so I would say, okay, let me now talk about, where, who are the users, of these products, and maybe talk about, where's the competition in this space. And then talk about the company itself, Uber, and what the company is trying to do, and maybe talk about partners here, partnerships. And then after talking about this, maybe I can get an idea of like, okay, what would be where do we want to be, right? What's the destination with these products? And then after I have that goal, right, then I'll say, all right, let's look at pros and cons. I would say, okay, pros and maybe cons. Actually, let's put it this way. I would say the apps alone and the apps together. And then I would put here, okay, what are the pros of being alone? What are the cons? And I would then go back to my analysis and say, okay, based on what I just talked about, the pros of being single, alone, are this with respect to, where the product is, perhaps the users, the competition, and so on, right? And together. And then at the end, basically synthesize. Okay, do we have more on the together side, less on the alone side? Based on where the product is and where, the state of the product, then, what should be the what should be the conclusion. That's sort of like the overall framework I would put into it. Somebody else has a different idea or wants to add something to it?
I have a question, Melina.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the state of the products, would you talk about both the state of the Uber Eats and the state of the Uber ride-sharing app?
Yes, I would, in particular, this question seems to be like, Uber has already been out there for a while, right? The Uber rides. And I would start by talking about, Uber Eats. And, that product is fairly new, or maybe a year or so, and where it is. And then how, where is this product going, right? Like, what is the problem today? Where's the bottleneck? And, is it on acquisition? Is it on retention? Whatever. And then talk about perhaps at that point where Uber Rides is, right? Maybe the problem is with retention today, right? And then maybe put a hypothesis out there, right? So like, how can they help each other, right? When they're together, as opposed to being alone. Does that make sense? Ellie?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry.
Ellie.
So
right.
When you're going through the 5 C's, you would go through just for Uber Eats, though, correct?
I think I would look at 5 C's in terms of I would use Uber Eats, yes, right? And yeah, from the Uber Eats perspective. Yeah, I think that's what I would do. That's right.
And so my only other question is, would you address the fact that, like, if you were to get this question in a product management interview, and you are the PM before Uber Eats launched, would you address the fact that, like, it launched as a separate app?
I think that's the question, right? So they're trying to say, hey, imagine that this is they're having that discussion, right, in the room, and saying, hey, we're thinking of launching Uber Eats. Should we do it? Should we put it as part of Uber, of the Uber Drive app, or should it be different app, right?
Yeah.
And but I think you throw in a good question, which is maybe you should ask about the context, which is, hey, is the context before it was launched?
Yeah. Is it today? Is it as is, the product as
is? Yeah.
Or are you talking about before it launched?
Yeah. And tell me why you think that's important.
Yeah, because I don't know what the constraints or what the situation was at the time of launch. But perhaps something has changed that we should be aware of when we're making this decision, or that will help provide context for why that decision was made in the first place.
Got it. Yeah. So that's very good. That's a very good, why you're asking this is because it changes. Why ask, right? Because it changes focus. It gives you context of what you should focus on.
Yeah.
Okay, good point. All right, let's assume that it's a situation where it has been launched. Okay.
Okay.
Now they want to think about how should we put it together. Okay. Great question, right? So let's start with that and say, what are the questions? So let's start with the questions that we will ask, right? And you say, okay, is there something specific that didn't work? Would you put it that way? With Uber Eats standalone, or is something driving this need? Is that the way that you would put it?
I guess I would ask, when we originally launched the app, what was the thinking behind separating the two? Because to me,
I'm sorry. Hey, Stefania, could you turn off your mic because I think it's interfering. All right. Yeah. Again, Lily.
I would want to know why the decision was made to separate the two from the get-go, because to me it seems like it would be such a huge advantage to stay within the Uber app. So what was the reasoning behind building it separately at the beginning?
Okay. What else?
And then where are we? Does that constraint or the reasoning is that still applicable today?
Well, certainly it's not, right? Because I think that the answer would be no because they're thinking of merging them, right? But it's a good segue into saying, okay, is that applicable today because
Yeah.
something? All right.
Like, so I would want to know, what are their top metrics?
Okay. For Uber Eats, okay. And tell me,
Yeah.
tell me how will you use this information? What are the top metrics?
Well, I can hypothesize some.
Hold on.
I can hypothesize some,
Okay.
and then we can work from there. So, for instance, the number of orders delivered per day,
Mm-hmm.
um, revenue per day.
All right. So revenue per day. Let's stop there. Now, the question is like, I guess what you want to say is like, what are the top metrics and are they doing well or
Yeah,
not? Right?
performance. Yeah,
Um, are they doing well? Okay. So right here, they will ask you and say, hey, what do you think the metric should be? Right? So you should be ready
Mhm.
with figuring out how to answer that question, right? And I agree with you. I think orders delivered per day is one metric. I would say qualifying that even more would be better. Like, for example, orders delivered per day satisfactorily or with 4 stars or 5 stars, right? Because you can be delivering orders per day, but maybe they are delayed and people are pissed off, right?
Mhm.
And you can game yourself because you are delivering them, but they are all late, right?
Yeah.
So I would say number of orders delivered on time, perhaps, right? Or with 5 stars or with satisfaction or whatever. Okay, that's a good point. Excellent. So let's
I
say,
have a question.
yeah,
Sorry, Melina. So, what does this, like, the top metrics, like, impact the decisions? I mean, like, if it's good, then we should separate or we should combine. Like, why do we really need to talk about metrics here?
yeah, and I think that Ellie probably has a good answer for that, Ellie, right?
Because that's their only way to gauge overall performance.
Can you repeat that, Ellie?
It's our only way to really gauge overall
Mhm.
performance.
Right. So by basically gauging, by looking at the top metric and understanding that it's not doing well, then you know that there's a problem, and that can lead you to think about, okay, will merging these applications will actually help this metric or not?
So, this is Sukanya. I wanted to ask if were there data from the driver's side that indicates that they would love to drive for both services, which could have potentially indicated that it makes sense to combine them.
I see. Um, data. data that needs to that needs to conclude merging is good. Okay, so you just throw one question there, right? So the question, Sukanya, was, are drivers willing to do both? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if they initially thought that, the target drivers who would drive for the different services would be different, but they eventually found out they are willing to do Uber Eats for a few hours and then they would go back and try to do rides, then potentially it's the same pool of drivers. It just makes more sense to combine on the consumer side.
Yeah.
But the driver, they have their driver app, right? They don't need to go to the
Yeah.
customer app.
Hold on. So, okay, so who said something right now?
I said, so is Danielle here. So I think the driver has his own app for Uber. So I'm not sure. So I think the driver can use driver app to either do like deliver food or deliver like take
So
customers.
that is the question that we're trying to determine here, right? So does it make sense to integrate both apps? So
Right.
that,
The Uber already has Uber driver app.
Yeah, I think the clarification is that there are the question here is about Uber rides, so it's from a rider's perspective who will order the
Yeah,
eats, not from the driver's perspective. So whether
yeah.
the driver wants to drive for both is not a factor in this question at all. It's whether
Right. Right, and I understand that, but times when you combine products, it could be because if I have like multiple apps and then I have to manage it on the driver side, it might become too complex. So I want to simplify it and put the riders into merge it into one app. So on the driver side, also I can merge it and put it as like one app. Like we don't know that, so I'm just asking this as a question.
yes, and I think it's an
Uh,
interesting question because I think one of the things also that with this question, what you're trying to determine is, hey, is there, because a lot of the issues with these markets is supply, right? You have demand, but there's not enough supply. So I think this question goes to the issue of like, hey, are we going to help our supply if we merge them? If we know, not merge, but know that the drivers will do both, are willing to do both. I think that's what Sukanya you're trying to arrive to, right?
Yes, correct. So if there's limited pool of drivers, then does it make sense to merge on the rider side, the apps on the consumer side as well, right? So
Yeah.
it just reduces the complexity of maintaining multiple apps from an operations point of view.
So we're gonna go into cost and benefits. And Danielle, I think that I wanted to clarify. We are making the assumption that this question, the context within this question is, hey, this is before the current situation, because today I know that Uber actually merged them, right? They have this, they're including Uber Eats in the Uber Rider app. And the question here is in the context in which they haven't yet put them together and merge them. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. But but it's like the driver doesn't really need to download the Uber Eats and Uber Ride apps. So the driver can just download one app, which is Uber Driver. So driver doesn't have the problem to driver doesn't need to go to both apps. I think that's
Yeah, but I think that we're talking about the consumer side of the application, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And I think actually, yeah, that was just something that we could have clarified at the beginning.
Right.
Mhm.
We're actually talking two completely different backends here.
Yeah. So what another question is here is, are we talking about the consumer and app or driver backend app? Okay. Yeah.
So I have a
Yeah, sorry.
yes, I have a question here. Is this a retention thing? Do they assume that they're going to get better user retention if they combine the two apps?
That's what we want to determine, right? What is it that they want to accomplish? So we haven't done that analysis yet, but we can move on right now to that unless somebody else have also good questions here for clarification. No? 1, 2, 3? All right.
Oh, we can't see your video, Malena, so I don't know if you've turned it off.
Oh, you cannot see my video?
No.
Oh, I can.
I can
I
see
can.
it.
We can. I can see your video.
I
I
can
have
see
it on.
Yeah, so pin Malena's screen. If you pin it, then it won't change when others are speaking.
Yes, I think so, Kanya, if you go to the right-hand corner and you click on people, then
Yeah, I've already pinned your screen, but I still don't see it. So I don't know if I'm in a different view altogether.
that's really strange. You wanna
Actually, tried unpinning and then pinning again because I was facing the same problem, but unpinned and pinned again. And
When I left, I think she would come join back.
do you try that, Sukanya?
I got it. Thanks.
All right, cool. All right, so where were we? Yeah. So let's move on into the analysis, okay? So let's start talking about here the products themselves and what's the state of Uber Eats. And this is before they merge. So anybody has a history of this? Can speak to it? So it's still, I think it was launched maybe a year ago.
Actually, I believe it was launched back in 2015.
Okay.
Well, it had a slow launch. So essentially, I think the backstory goes, they started with just a group, very small group of people delivering different goods in the back of the cars. And that was kind of a guerrilla tactic where they wanted to see what people would buy in very limited releases. And I believe they started their first launch in, I believe it was LA, when it was still part of the Uber app.
It was part of the Uber app. It was already part of the Uber.
I believe it was part of the Uber app, and then it
No.
broke
It
out
was
into
released
something.
separately.
It was?
It was released separately on its own app.
It was always released separately?
It was always released separately. In 2015, though, you're correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I went to one of their marketing things where they talked about the backstory, but essentially when they had a guerrilla tactic thing, when they were doing it, kind of hacking away at the problem state, they launched, I think, in very limited markets, in very limited releases, within the app, right? Because they didn't build a separate thing and launch it all the way. So I think you're right. In the official launch, they probably had a separate app by itself.
And it has grown, but there's a lot of competition in this market. So I wonder what is their market share, overall? Do you know that, Shin?
That I don't. They came about the same time around with Caviar, DoorDash, and where's the other one?
Grubhub.
Grubhub. Yeah, Grubhub was one of the first.
Yeah, so very competitive market. Okay, so we can basically say, hey, they don't own the market, right? Not number one yet, right?
I would say the market is still trying to mature, because when you go to any of the, let's say, the restaurants, as a restaurant, I'm trying to serve several of these platforms, right? So orders that are coming in from, whatever the
very strong, very strong, right? This is not clear winner yet, right? Although I think there's everybody orders through Grubhub. I think people know that more, right?
Postmates.
No, I think DoorDash is the number one total consumer spend, not from a market share perspective.
Okay.
And Postmates.
Yeah.
And who is second?
Postmates.
Close Beats?
Postmates.
That's surprising.
Well, from the consumer spend, it's not. I think it's DoorDash and Group Hub and Uber Eats, and then Postmates.
Grubhub, Uber Eats, and then how do you spell the fourth one?
Postmates, so POSTMATES.
P-O,
Yeah, you can just say that.
Post?
Yeah, and then Mates, MATES.
Like this.
Yes.
Postmates. Okay, good.
Mhm.
All right, so Uber Eats is third. You know, you want it to be number one. Okay, so now we have sort of an idea where it stands relative to the competition. How about where does the company? What does Uber want to do? Right? What's their mission with this Uber Eats?
Diversification of revenue.
Revenue stream, additional revenue.
Diversify revenue. Okay. Is that it?
Grow consumer base.
Okay. Overall. So not only for this Eats, but overall, right? For the company.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other insights?
Well, they already had like the the hard part. They already had figured out, like the logistics,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a huge user base by this time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like they had the two hardest parts already done.
So logistics advantage, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of like the strength. Okay. So this is sort of like competitive advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other insights?
Well, so looking at that link that was just sent out, kind of want to ask a clarifying question. In terms of market share, what is, are we distinguishing the difference between just ordering and getting it delivered? Because Grubhub, I don't know if they also do delivery as well now?
I think market share is probably in terms of the number of dollars, right?
Okay, but I mean, I think in terms of the experience
Yeah.
from the consumer's perspective, when you order from Grubhub or Seamless, and it's part of Grubhub, you go and pick it up, right? Do you also get it delivered as a
Yeah, there is
service?
both. There is pickup and delivery with Grubhub.
Okay, so the people that are delivering, are they part of the restaurant or are they contractors to Grubhub?
Grubhub. You're saying, so I'm sure Grubhub does. I don't know, how does Grubhub work? Because they probably have. They don't have their own fleet. They probably contract, right? Does anybody know?
You can actually sign up to be a Grubhub driver.
I see. So they do have their own drivers then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, any normal person, as they sign up to be a Uber driver, they can also sign up to be a Grubhub driver and
Gotcha.
deliver food.
So Sheen, what was your
Thank you.
what was your concern relative to market share?
Well, the concern was that you have different, I guess you have different, what is it called? You have kind of different buy-ins, well, commitments towards your services. One is that you have contractors and the other one you may not. I'm just wondering if if they are all the same, but sounds like they are. So
Yeah,
in terms,
I think it's a similar model, right, where they have their own drivers.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's look at. All right. So partnerships here. Do they have partnerships? Well, the partners are the restaurants, I suppose, or those are the customers too. But are there any specific partnerships that they have?
Yeah, this is Deepam here. So they do have partnerships with, like Lyft have partnerships with airlines. We can have those partnerships with other companies as well.
But hold on. So Uber has partnerships for Uber Eats right now.
I'm saying Uber Eats can have overall whatever rewards you get out of Uber Eats and Uber, You can have partnership with companies, and then people can redeem or get benefits out of those rewards.
Yeah, I was thinking currently, not in the future or what we can do, but currently, if they have
I,
partnerships,
I
yeah,
think
I think they
McDonald's.
work with the Venmo. Yeah, that's what I think too.
they work with
Yeah, I think McDonald's had Uber as their
Oh, not
delivery partner.
McDonald's. Yeah. Well,
Uh, yeah, but I think they recently also signed in DoorDash to be their partner. So now they have both.
really? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, McDonald's. Yes. I was thinking like they are doing with Venmo. So
Venmo.
the payment has like $5 off on Uber Eats. Like if you use Venmo to pay it.
awesome. Okay, what else? Any other intelligence here?
I think they also have a partnership with Visa. So all the Visa credit card users can basically use that as the payment method. And whenever they shop in any of the Visa restaurants, I think they get credits back. They have some sort of partnership like that.
Okay, that's cool. Very good.
But Malina, I think this also drives a competitive advantage for them. I mean, at their scale, for a Visa or a Stripe, the volume they can drive can reduce their cost of operations and give them an advantage over the likes of DoorDashes or Grubhub.
Yeah, in terms of like where people can use these payments, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and just the scale, right? So many people use Uber, so they can use that scale to negotiate possibly better cost advantages.
Yeah. Okay. The scale and overall, yeah, that's what you're saying. Competitive advantage in terms of like maybe preferences, right?
Preferences plus if it costs like for DoorDash $1 to deliver that food for end-to-end experience wise. For Uber, it might cost you 90 cents because you might save 10 cents because of the scale you have for negotiating these partnerships.
Okay, so can drive down price for consumer, right?
Yeah.
Good. Cool.
Hi, Melina.
Uh-huh.
Hi. So we knew that a number of the customers in Uber Eats come into Uber Eats and they're not users of Uber, the main Uber riding app.
Yeah.
And by integrating both apps, there's a possibility that they can start an Uber Eats and then
very good. And that's
want to do Uber right now.
Of users. Let's talk about users and users of Uber Eats are not all Uber riders, and Uber riders are not all in Uber Eats, right? So you were saying, Oluseyi, that Uber riders may not be Uber Eats users. So by merging them, there's an advantage, right? I mean, you can increase your pool, your acquisition.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and basically extend the user base to Uber, to the Uber riding app, which is a much more frequent user incident.
Yeah.
It's an easier customer acquisition. Yeah.
Frequency of incidents, because people are taking rides all the time, right? And they see Uber Eats, so it's a great way of marketing it. Great.
Another thing they're working on that I'm seeing is they're really pushing for loyalty to the Uber platform. So they have the Uber credit card, they have Uber Cash, they give rewards, and they have different tiers now. So they're trying to incentivize people to earn those credits to save cash on their Uber rides and their Uber Eats together. And so that's kind of how they're driving.
Okay. So you can drive loyalty. You're saying you can drive loyalty of your users by sort of like doing like promotion.
Yeah.
Promotions.
Yeah.
Promotions across both services. Better together, right? Better for user. Better together. All right. Somebody else was saying something.
Oh, I just wanted to add on that Uber Eats, I think they're doing like an Eat Pass where it's like a monthly subscription for $10. So you can pretty much not pay the delivery fee and you kind of get a discount on your order. So it's like for people who use the application a lot.
Okay, so how would that, I'm just thinking about how to incorporate, Sanjana, what you just said into into advocating for merging or not? How would you use that point that you just made?
I think if it does well, they might kind of implement it for like Uber rides. So Lyft kind of has a similar thing where Lyft has like a pass that you can use to get like a certain amount of unlimited rides based on a monthly subscription. So if the Uber Eats pass does well, they might want to merge it with Uber rides itself because there might be people that actually use Uber frequently for commuting.
There is one already.
Yeah, I was about to add the same. Like, I think there is a cross sell that is possibly here in play that they can have a pass for Uber Eats and also one for Uber Rides, but they're probably because of this cross sell, there can be some potential cannibalization in both the lines of business.
Okay, so here is like possible merging of what they call pass. Is it the pass?
Mm-hmm.
And that will give users more benefits, right? Okay.
But can I ask a contrarian question, Marina?
Yeah.
So let's say we are now only thinking about US. Let's say if we go global, there are a lot of countries where Uber doesn't operate. What happens in that scenario? If we don't merge, we can independently operate.
Right. So let's talk about the company here. So Uber doesn't. That's right. So it is important to take this into account, right? What to do? What happens, right? Maybe we just put here. Uber does not operate in some countries, but maybe Uber Eats does.
Yeah.
That's currently happening. I know for a fact that in South Korea, for example, you can't be an Uber driver for personal rides, but you can be an Uber Eats driver.
Interesting, right? So that's something should be taken into account. Excellent point. All right, so we have a lot of good things here, and we can put this into a pro and con. Somebody else has more ideas, more opinions?
Just a quick question. So how does it matter if you cannot operate in one service or the other? I mean, you can always control it from the back end to see that there's only one part of the app that is still there, or for that country, you can control it from the app store as well.
No, so let me. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, for example, if you go to Europe now, for all the antitrust that is being discussed, they want to keep it separate. You cannot control on the back end.
But
got it. Okay.
So a lot of companies are intentionally keeping it separate because you cannot exchange information across platforms.
Okay, so there is a limitation in merging the app across countries,
Yeah.
but doesn't really have to do with the fact that one service operates and the other doesn't. So it's more of a legal kind of a limitation than saying that we can't merge the app because the services are not there, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Is this Sukanya?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Sukanya. And so you're saying, you know what? If that's the issue, that's not pertaining to what we're discussing. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Melina, sorry, I have one more thing to say. I don't know if this is relevant, but when you think about the fact that a user, at least for myself, I have 2 different apps, and oftentimes I would remove the Uber Eats app because I don't use it as often. But if you have both apps integrated in one app, the user doesn't have to like download the app, and it makes it a much more similar user experience. And I think for phones, the real estate is like valuable space.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the fact that if you have both Uber Eats and the ride in one app, it drives customer engagement. And like someone says, that is really vital to the loyalty program, which will really differentiate it from Lyft.
Okay, so I think let's go one by one, Yuki. So you mentioned that it could be a more seamless experience if they are together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's put here experience. Okay.
So you don't have to download a second app.
Seamless because no download. Okay. No download of second app. Okay. Then the next point that you made was what?
I said that when you have both apps when you have both products on one app, they cross feed off of each other, and that really helps to drive engagement, which is very critical for the loyalty program, which is one way that Uber is hoping to differentiate itself from Lyft.
Yeah. We mentioned that,
Okay.
with promotions and stuff. So
Okay.
cross feeding, that's really good. Yeah, that's already there. So let's put these points in a table here.
Hey,
Um,
Malena,
yeah.
sorry, I had just one question. So, would you consider brand perception as a point here? Um, because say if Uber was just into ridership, maybe people would perceive it as a transportation business, just to help people kind of move from one place to another. But say if now we have Uber Eats and it's embedded in the same app, their perception about the brand Uber might change. So, will that be a consideration?
Yeah. Well, we can have opinions here, right? I think that some people would say yes, some people would say no, right? And the way to test this is with doing a test with your users, right? Maybe you show them a merge version or isolated version, and you know, give some a survey or something like that. See how they use them, right?
I think I think that's a very valid point though, because Uber initially launched as a not being a price sensitive product. It
I'm
was
sorry.
kind of like,
Can you repeat that? Very hard to hear you.
yeah, when Uber launched, they didn't launch with the value prop of being the cheapest. That was not one of their value props. It was more about luxury.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think she brings up a very valid point that, we're talking about Uber, who sort of built themselves on this like being sleek, chic brand where everybody could have. It was at one point the tagline was everybody's personal driver, and now we're talking about a brand like McDonald's. So the two brands are kind of at conflict.
I wouldn't say McDonald's, right? I would say more like DoorDash. I mean, they're picking your food and bringing it to you. They're not making it, right? Um, and it would be interesting to see here the voting of people. Maybe I wish we had a voting here, but when I was thinking about it, I was thinking along those terms a little bit. I was thinking, hey, you know what? Do I want to see when I enter Uber? I'm looking for a car, right? I'm not looking to eat anything, right? But then I was thinking, hey, so what? You put it in the app, and maybe you have a very seamless way of visualizing both apps or both entries.
Yeah.
Or
No,
maybe,
I'm not saying it's not doable, but I think it's a valid point worth discussing. Because even just just having it's like a logo salad within your app. When Uber worked so hard at the beginning to sort of distinguish itself as this like the sleeker player, whereas Lyft was kind of like the silly big pink mustache, and Uber was like the sleek chic.
Where does Uber want to go? I think that's
Yeah, so I was about to bring up the mission statement here. I remember reading or having seen an interview where they talk about we will start moving anything that needs to be moved from point A to B. So that would be the way where, if I am going to build on top of this business, I would want there to be one app where this person can go and maybe buy anything and everything and be transporting it from point A to B. And
maybe
that's where
the mission statement. I love it. We move everything. And that would cover absolutely everything. And I think that you're right, Sukanya. I think that what's happening, and all you guys bring very good points. I was thinking about the branding too, and I think it is at a state that is changing, right? So it's definitely a good point to bring up, and to the discussion. So I think.
Hey, there's one more point which I want to bring up for Melina. This might also help with the retention for drivers. Today, a lot of drivers switch between Uber and Lyft, right? So if we bring everything like eats and rides into the same ecosystem during the time of surge, or more traffic, people can find alternate options, and they can either do rides or they can go.
That's a very good point. So we'll put that here. Part of the users are the drivers. So I'm going to put here. Drivers, they can have more options, right? Have more options of drive. Right. Got
Yeah.
it.
This is sort of like help keep everyone in the same ecosystem, right? Rather than like working in multiple ecosystems.
And I think that's big. I think that's huge. What you just brought.
Melina, another question.
Yeah.
Did we, going back to the beginning, what are we assuming here, that this is the current state of the app? We're deciding whether or not to make this decision.
Now, it's let's assume is not the current state, is before, it was after both apps were launched separately.
Okay. Yeah.
Then now they're bringing all the PMs to the table, and now we are discussing, hey, should we actually merge them? Okay. All right.
One other thing that I just want to bring up, it's sort of like it should be on the radar screen and at least like acknowledged, is the fact that the former CEO of Uber is working on, has launched a product around ghost kitchens and food delivery.
What is ghost kitchens? Like kitchens that don't exist?
It's like where you can get a kitchen on demand. So it's like they're taking like abandoned real estate and creating kitchens so that people can basically launch a restaurant without having to take on all the traditional costs of that it takes to
Is it like trucks, food trucks?
Sort of, except the delivery is a separate piece.
Okay.
So the food trucks, in the sense that like people can, whoever the entity that's occupying the food truck can come and go, but the logistics of like where the food is delivered is separate.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I'm wondering if this has, are they viewing him as a competitor, or are they viewing this as like a possible partnership?
You mean ghost restaurants?
I think it's called CSS.
It stands for?
Commercial. It's CSS. That's all I know.
Okay, I'm gonna put here ghost restaurants partnerships. So I'm just gonna put that as a question mark, okay? Because that could be a good incentive, also.
And he's still on the board of Uber, so.
Yeah, cool. Very good points. We have a lot of points here. All right, so let's summarize this into pros and cons, alone or together, okay? All right, so I'm going to erase, and then we're going to remember all this, and we're going to put this as pros or cons. All right. Okay. So we're going to put pros, no, alone and together. Okay. Pros, and then we're going to put here cons. All right, so I'm just going to put, just a summary of what we discussed here and the pros and cons. Maybe I should have done that from the beginning, but all right. So I'm going to start here with, okay, I'm going to start with delivery. Okay, so for the pro of being together, I'm going to put drivers, more options. Now they can either do Uber or Uber Eats. Okay. We have also all right. So we have sort of like cross promotions for users between, Uber and Uber Eats. Okay. And then, and I guess this promotes, loyalty, right? Right. Other things here we have, what do we have here? Okay. We have the user experience on here, which could be, seamless, more seamless, because you don't need no second download. All right. And not only that, but you'll have more rapid acquisition, I would say, because of that, right? On Uber Eats of users. All right. We also said, what else here? Yeah. The cross promotion here is the pass thing, the pass between both. All right. Okay, so that's together, and these all have to do with users. Now let's put something else here. Partnerships. It could be here scaling by partnering. Partner with more of the Venmos. Is that part of together? Is that part of the together thing? No, right? Partnerships you can do anyways, along or together. So that's not part of this. What else? Okay, so another thing is like what we just talked about. If the mission is to be moving everything, that there is, we move everything, then I'm gonna put here may helps mission or align with mission. Possible if that mission is that, right? Aligned with mission. We move everything. Okay. What else? What else did we talk about? Oh, all right. So here is leverage logistical advantage, right? Of Uber.
Well, don't they have that anyway, together or alone?
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess so. Yep. What else? All right, so let's look at the pros of being alone. What are the pros? Focus branding. Would that be it?
Yeah, I'd say like with Facebook Messenger, one of the reasons they launched Messenger separately was because they thought they could get a larger audience than they could of people from just being Facebook profiles,
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm wondering if that applies to this as well. So maybe not, people don't necessarily have to.
We were advocating for both, together and alone, or just alone.
What do you mean, for Uber Eats to be alone?
Well, because you brought the example of Messenger, right? And I think that the thing with Messenger was kind of interesting. Everybody was on Facebook, right? So they put Messenger on Facebook because they wanted the people from Facebook to get to know Messenger, right? And then they also had the standalone app, right? So they would.
The original purpose of why they built Messenger was because they thought they would they thought it would have a larger audience than Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, I didn't know that.
They thought that people would join Messenger because they needed a message platform more so than if they needed like a Facebook profile.
But I would imagine that strategy for acquiring people to use Messenger, when people didn't know Messenger, right?
Yeah.
What is the fastest way of acquiring your users? I would imagine, hey, let's put it on Facebook.
Yeah, no,
also,
they did. They
Alina,
captured it.
WhatsApp was really popular, and Messenger was a way to acquire more users from WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Messenger was a way to acquire users for WhatsApp?
No, I think she's correct because Messenger was a way to acquire users for Facebook, but Messenger was integrated in such a way that you could start messaging people on your contacts without them being on Facebook.
Exactly.
So they integrated your phone book into your contacts and into Messenger, and people were invited to Messenger, and they would just sign up. They don't need to be part of Facebook. So from Messenger they moved into Facebook.
So it was the opposite then, to acquire new users for Facebook.
That's my understanding.
That was the original intent. Yeah, and they basically, when they learned it from WhatsApp, because they saw people on WhatsApp, which was growing outside of the U.S. predominantly. They acquired WhatsApp because they had a user base that Facebook doesn't have.
Right.
And they noticed that messaging was so popular, so they said, let's try and do this with Facebook, but let's do it through a messenger app where people can talk regardless of whether or not they're on Facebook. So they built it separate with the belief that there would be more people joining without a Facebook profile.
I see. Without Facebook required. But I heard also, one of you said that it was also a strategy for growing the base of the Facebook platform, of users on the Facebook platform. Is that correct?
Not necessarily the Facebook platform, but just for their user base in general, right? So now if you have a phone, they will get your information, and you don't need to have a Facebook account. So it may not be necessarily for those to get people on a Facebook, but just to get you into their ecosystem.
Okay.
But in any case, can one reason for the Uber keeping it alone be technical, where the app becomes so big that it is hard? It becomes very slow and it cannot operate as fast as it would, and it degrades the user experience if you have if you create a very complex app.
I think that's definitely like something we would want to consider, but I don't know that would trump the.
No, I don't think that would be a concern to merge these two apps. I think in terms of the performance, because
you don't think that would be any concern.
I don't think so. Like if you look at those apps, they're like Mickey Mouse apps. I mean, in terms of like the UI and all the stuff, right? Yeah. I think that a lot of the stuff that happens is on the back end because you have billions of people. But it's not like a game, right? That requires 3D image processing and video and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can design what they have right now with HTML, and CSS and JavaScript. You don't even need to be native. But let's go back to this issue of branding, right? So if you have two separate apps, and then you have Uber with the two apps, and I think, Olosiyeki, you were bringing this issue, right? Of like having separate, you can clearly identify one or the other app whenever you need them. If you would put them together, then there's a problem.
So I was saying, oh, okay.
Olosiyeki, we lost you.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't too sure if it was me or somebody else. So what I was saying was that was more of the pro of why the two apps should be together. I was saying that you wouldn't have to download a separate app on your mobile phone in terms of like real estate space.
Okay. All right. So, but is there an issue with branding? If you have them together, do you think it's an issue with branding? Does anybody say anything?
Yeah, maybe at the beginning it could have been like, for instance, like my parents live in Los Angeles, they've never taken an Uber, but they would want food delivery, and they might get confused by the two being in the same app, that they don't know what they're signing up for.
Yeah, maybe confusion at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one hypothesis.
The other one was with the delete Uber movement. I think people just deleted Uber and they stopped using it, right? So if we were to combine, they would just delete both of they would just delete one app, and they would not be able to use both services. Keeping them separate, if they're unhappy or there's something happening like a movement, they would just delete the rider app. They might potentially still use the Uber Eats app portion.
Okay. Let's
Yeah, Uber was like very precarious at that time too. Like the whole brand was sort of under a microscope.
Right, all the more reason for them to like protect the brand.
Good point, exactly. So let's risk of
but then I question, like, why didn't they just call it something completely different then?
Like is Uber Eats,
like instead of Uber Eats, like why not just call it like
Eats?
or like food to you or something?
Well, because nobody's going to say, hey, I'm scared that my brand is going to like right? And it's like fire, if you're the CEO and you start talking like that. No, you have to.
At the time, Uber was under such controversy that people were deleting the app just because if they didn't like stuff that the CEO was doing.
Right. But you would want to say the opposite, right? I want the brand to actually. I'm not afraid of the brand. I'm going to make it really a good brand, right? Because if you're like, hey, we should just have separate names in case we screwed up with the brand, and that sounds weird, right? Anyways, all right. So, any other pros for keeping them alone? How about no, I forget that. I had another idea. But what else? What else, guys?
So I think the Ride app and the Eats app are still in their growth phases. I think right now Uber Eats, at least according to the last S1, was the fastest growing, I guess, business department or segment under their wing.
Mm-hmm.
So in trying to create this, ecosystem of being the transportation of everything, it's right now I think it's still better to keep them separate. If you look abroad at the super apps, let's say the WeChats of the world, right, or the Alipays, or even like the Grab app of Singapore and Malaysia. Now, Grab incorporates everything from taxis to payments to B2P to hotels to ticketing. Now, it's a different interface, and people kind of have that recognition to say, yes, my mode of behavior, or this is what I use every day. But Grab kind of saturates the market without any other predominant player. So in terms of from the user perspective, when you're growing and you're still fighting for that market share and you're still trying to create this ecosystem of different modes of transportation for getting from point A to B, it's still probably better to keep it separate.
And okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying, hey, it's better to keep them separately while they're growing to actually make sure that people understand the different services?
Yeah, for now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, right now I believe Uber doesn't use their own payment system. They piggyback off of probably someone else. They use both Visa and PayPal, which is Venmo. I don't know what else is under the hood.
Yeah.
But in terms of having other things, I think they're doing trucking and probably self-driving. But in any case, like the different modes of transportation are still growing themselves, and like putting them together right now, it's kind of slowing down I would say it slows down the infrastructure, meaning that if you are a consumer side or business side PM versus a platform side PM, there's going to be a lot of jockeying for positions within the main app itself. Let's say if I open the Uber app, what should I see first? Should I see Ride first or should I see Eats first? And then if something else comes along, well, which one should I see first? Should I go to the dashboard first, or can I just get the first ride off the bat? I think that's kind of a position to say, well, let's grow these segments, mature them, and then incorporate it together. in terms of branding, I think, I mean, using Facebook as an example, I think I read recently that Facebook wants to name Instagram, and Facebook WhatsApp and something else, right? I think there's an article or something with that headline. So it kind of, Facebook is doing it in reverse, where they want to put their big name brand on top of everything else.
Interesting. Okay, good point. All right, let's move on to cons. What's the thing against being alone? Alone up. Well, you don't have all this togetherness, good things. I guess this is the opposite of that, right? Not having this. And the cons of being together is the opposite of that. So let's just focus on this. When we look at this, right, and we see the pros of being alone, the pros of being together, and unless you guys have specific cons that we haven't mentioned here, what is like something from your gut that tells you alone is better or alone is no good?
Well, so alone, I just think that the market is
So over time, if we
Yeah.
So it's the
it
market
becomes
is so-
complex and very confusing. So I wouldn't keep integrating the apps over time, right? I mean, Facebook for one, they're trying to keep the app separate. Whereas here we're trying to like merge all of them together. So that I would see as a con in the long term.
Merging them together because
if we keep merging more services together, I think the previous person who spoke brought up a good point, right? What would I show to this user when they launch the app? It over time it could get really confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the opposite instinct that I think the food delivery space is so saturated right now that Uber Eats is not top of mind for me. But Uber is. Like people that use Uber a lot. And so is there a chance that I could be reminded to order food through Uber Eats while I'm in app?
Yeah,
I think I'm a strong proponent for I think mind share.
Yeah, mind share. Yeah, and I actually also think like that. I see both points. I think that the one of keep merging over time can be a little confusing. I think that you can play with some some machine learning and dynamic UI to really know what the person uses most, right? Is it using Uber Eats most, or is that person using more Uber most of the time, and that's what shows up first, and maybe there's a small icon for the other apps. I can think that there could be some innovations in that space, but anyways, it seems like there are a lot of what do you think, guys? I think that there's more in terms of being good things on the together side than less on the alone side. What's your take?
I just want to, I am more on the alone camp, but I just want to put a reference point here for Google, right? Google doesn't merge all their apps together because every app needs to have their own unique growth path, growth features. So that's something for to think. Now, Google doesn't put all the productivity apps in one app. Right? App productivity all together.
Yeah, they have different apps for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that point too, right? I think that what convinces me here is this, hey, Uber Eats, we're not number one yet. Our goal is to be number one. We need to acquire a lot of users. And so, I think that merging them will bring those Uber users into Uber Eats. They're frequently using Uber, right? So it's going to become top of mind Uber Eats for them. So it's a way to sort of grow the acquisition, the number of people using Uber Eats. And yeah, well, maybe in the future, once we have that, we'll separate them. But in the meantime, I think it's a great idea. Also having these cross promotions, hey, you have extra points, that they give you. You have 20 rides will give you then, $10 for your Uber Eats. Right now you can do that cross-promotional thing, which is, I think it's a great idea. And then it fits so well. This is the most important thing with the mission, move everything. So it's kind of aligned, right, with it. So for those reasons, I think I will go with this. For this, less risk of deletion. I don't think that's, that's sort of like a corporate level thing. If they screwed up, yes, that's a problem. But they're supposed to not screw up. And in terms of branding, yeah, as I said, it's better because you're aligned with the mission if you merge them. That would be my conclusion.
Hey, Melina, I have a question.
Yeah.
Before we decide which one to choose, wouldn't it be helpful to sort of have like some criteria which we use to evaluate with the pros and the cons?
Yeah, this is it, right? This is the pros and the cons, right? This is pros and cons, right? And so we're putting here the pros that we look at, at the 5 C's, across user, competition, company, partnerships, right? And then the cons. And if you want to test this, then the next thing would be to like, hey, should we have like a test on this thing, right? And what you would need to do is to have your metric, right, which is number of orders delivered with happiness or on time, and pick a few cities where you deploy the new merging app, and the other cities are still using the separate app, and see which, if your metric actually increases. That's what I would do. And probably that's what they did. Any other input? All right. Great discussion. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from you guys today.
How would
and we learn from each other.
How would you summarize your answer in the interview?
My answer in the interview is like, I would say, okay, so, I started thinking about the state of the product, okay, and across different business areas, what would be the pros and cons across these business aspects, the user experience, the company, partnerships, and which one would be more positive or, for being a owner together. And based on that, I think that there are more points towards being together that will actually have an effect in the number of orders. That's my hypothesis. I think that having more diverse, more options for drivers, cross promotions, and also being aligned with the mission will actually be better. And we can measure that with the test.
Okay. What would be your counter metric?
Counter metric. Okay, so something negative that we don't want to happen, right? I think what could be a counter metric? That's a good point. Let me think for a moment. So we want number of orders to go up and on time. What happens if that is very successful? Okay, we have a lot of number of. So counter metric is like if number of. Can this affect the number of Uber rides?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, I agree with that. I think something that counters this would be being inundated or like overwhelmed with the experience. If I go in to try to have a ride and you keep advertising things to say, hey, why don't you eat in and order this? Then that kind of goes against what my mode. And as a consumer, I maybe mainly have 2 different modes. I want to go out somewhere, social currency is a high thing. If I want to go out, maybe I want to be sociable, be seen, take pictures of food, this, that, and then third. If I want to stay in, maybe I want to be nice and quiet and to have something that comes to me. Don't need to go through all that time to, dress out to go out. So if you are advertising or nudging me towards a different mode of thinking, then I might be turned off by it. And then switching costs is so easy. I can just go to Lyft to say, well, no, this is too busy. I'm just going to take a ride and go with someone else.
Yeah, good point. So you're being very successful. You know, you have all these ads about eating and stuff like that, right? And you have more restaurants that want to, you know, work with you. That could become a problem.
Yeah, or if you also too, if you had, let's say, the number of orders went up, but they didn't necessarily, like, the people didn't like the food, or the food was delivered sloppily or something, could that hurt the brand in some long-term way where, like, I used Uber every day, but like, oh, they messed up my order, and now all of a sudden, like, I'm mad at Uber.
You're saying because now they have too many orders?
No. Let's just say that I was a loyal Uber rider, and then I ordered, you know, I got a message in my app to say, like, oh, have your food meet you at your house the same time, have dinner delivered at the same time. So I ordered dinner from McDonald's, whatever, and it comes, and let's say, like, I ordered a drink and it spilled or whatever, it was cold. I have this association with Uber being,
yeah, like damage, brand damage.
I'm upset over something about Uber Eats, but I'm, like, in my head now combining Uber Eats and Uber.
Yeah, brand damage of Uber due to Uber Eats problems, right?
Yeah, like, I feel like it's a lot easier to screw up food delivery than it is to screw up a ride delivery.
Yeah, that's the risk, right?
Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking is, look, since we're using the same drivers, that's the idea, right? Once you have a lot, if you're very successful with orders of Uber Eats, well, it's going to decrease the supply of drivers, right? So countermetric would be supply of drivers for Uber rides. So that I think would be huge, right? I mean, that could be a problem. Anyways, I think cool. Thank you so much for tonight. I think it was really a very interesting problem.
Yeah, thank you, Melina.
Welcome, guys.
Bye.